Hey everybody, it is Wednesday and it is 11 o'clock Pacific time, so we are going to start doing another live today. And we are going to have a special guest, Lorna Vanderhaeghe, again to talk to us about iron. And we are here on the BioFe page. So, of course, it's all going to be about iron and more specifically our BioFe iron products. So, we are going to wait for Lorna to join and then we are going to jump right in. So, if you have any questions, please view request. Let's add her right now. Make sure we answer all the questions that you have today. All right. She has joined. Yay! It worked.
Here we are again, talking about iron.
That's right. So it's very exciting. We are on the BioFe page today talking about our great tasting BioFe products that are micronized and microencapsulated. And so, of course, we want to talk all about iron today.
Well, we do. And somebody actually sent me a text asking me what my history is, my educational history. And so I thought I should tell people that I have a master's in science in biochemistry and nutrition. And I have authored 13 books on nutrition, lots of talk about iron. And I have been talking about health and nutrition now for almost 40 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's all I've ever known you to be doing. So I don't know if that gave away my age or not. But, and of course, I am the CEO and founder of KidStar Nutrients, and part of the KidStar line, we have an amazing iron product line called BioFe Iron. And we have products for 0 months all the way up to seniors, something for everyone. And of course, they taste great, they don't cause constipation, and they don't stain your teeth. So today we're going to be talking about like what is iron, what about deficiencies, what to look for in different age groups, and what we can do to help ourselves.
Well, it's a good point. And you mentioned right at the beginning that BioFe is a micronized and microencapsulated iron, and nobody knows what that really means. So when we micronize something, we make it into tiny, tiny little particles so that it can be properly absorbed, because general iron supplements that you are commonly seeing in the pharmacy are not micronized and microencapsulated. So we make them extremely tiny, the molecules, so that you're able to absorb it properly. And then we microencapsulate it. Why do we do that? Microencapsulation is very important because iron is hard in the stomach. You know, when your stool turns black, it's because you're actually getting intestinal bleeding. That's why your stool turns black. That's not a good thing. If you were taking a micronized iron like BioFe, that would not happen. And also when we micronize and microencapsulate something, it doesn't turn your teeth black. Like regular liquid irons, if you ever go into the pharmacy and pick up the kids' irons that are in liquid, they actually have a warning, will turn your child's teeth gray. And guess what? It's often very difficult to reverse that. So you end up with this graying, awful color of your baby's teeth. Well, luckily the baby's teeth fall out before they're 6, but you don't want to have that happen in older children and in adults. So with the BioFe iron, the micronizing it makes sure that it's absorbed very well. Mm-hmm. And the microencapsulation ensures you don't get tummy upset, you don't get gray teeth, you don't get constipated, you don't get black stool. And it also improves the body's ability to absorb iron at the receptor site in the small intestine. Yeah. So that's why it's really important when you go look for an iron supplement that it says micronized and microencapsulated. You want to look for those much higher quality. They're way better for you and they're going to do the job better, and you will need less iron to get to the same effect.
Definitely. And I know how you said right there about the small intestine. And I actually wanted to point out that some people with digestive issues in the small intestine, like celiac, they have a hard time absorbing nutrients from food. So this is a great supplement that actually makes it to the small intestine, and it is absorbed well with those patients as well.
And I'd go further. If you have gas, burping, bloating, constipation, or diarrhea, you know, it's celiac 1, Crohn's, IBS, you know, irritable bowel syndrome, and also people who just have a whole bunch of digestive issues have problems absorbing their nutrients. And, you know, considering that iron deficiency is the #1 deficiency in North America, in the world, And especially in our children and in women and in athletes and in old people and in men and in everyone. This is not just a problem of menstruating and pregnant women. This is a problem for everybody.
Yes, I know. And it's such a good point that you said that, because people always say, oh no, I'm not pregnant. Oh no, I don't have that problem. But you're right. It can hit every single demographic, age group, socioeconomic status, everybody. It is not to one specific group. Iron deficiency does happen to everybody.
Well, and people think it's only a problem when you're anemic. Well, by that point, you can barely walk up a flight of stairs without huffing and puffing. You have no energy. Your skin is pale. Your hair is falling out. Your fingernails are peeling. You're depressed. You have low moods. You can't make estrogen and progesterone because your iron is so low. I mean, it's serious. And in children, we end up with the no sleep, the kids who can't sleep, the kids who are having temper tantrums, the fact they're growing so fast and they don't have enough iron for brain development and all the other height development, their ability to do well in school, all of these things. And I mean, it's such a serious problem that I'm shocked that they don't test our babies when they're born, especially to moms who were already anemic when they're pregnant. And I know that you want to talk about that.
Yeah, no, that's a near and dear to my heart, that I do hope that one day we get to push for, is that we do test at birth. I think we should test every baby at birth. We actually, sometimes they actually talk about the fact that they think everything's perfect because the baby's fine and everything looks good and we're going to move forward. But if your pregnancy was complicated, or you had lots of blood loss, or the baby was born early, you're already set up to have low iron. And UBC actually just did a really good study that pointed out that 80% of the pregnant women in their study had inadequate iron, and they were all taking a prenatal. So that is, in a prenatal vitamin, you have 27 milligrams of elemental iron, and it's to maintain your iron levels during pregnancy. So if you had low iron prior to getting pregnant, that 27 milligrams is not going to help you during that pregnancy and keeping your iron levels nice and high.
Well, and I go further than that. If you're taking a bad iron supplement, okay, and a lot of the prenatals, especially the one I took, when I was pregnant with all of you, that old prenatal, which is still the number one selling prenatal on the market that doctors keep recommending, it constipates the life out of you. So half those pregnant women are probably lying, because after about 3 weeks on that supplement, you're in big trouble.
Yeah.
They stop taking it, but they don't tell their doctor because they know that they should be taking it.
Yes.
And if you're right, if you were already low in iron, and we should talk about what that is, because there's another problem with the testing, the fact that people do not have adequate iron levels when they go into pregnancy. And, we know that miscarriages and infertility are related to low iron. And considering that is the number one deficiency, there are so many people who have this problem.
Yes.
So when you get tested, and I think everybody should get tested, especially, look at your kid's eye, pull them down, pull the eyelid down. And if it's not bright red, then you need to get your kids iron tested, or better yet, put them on iron. And there is no reason to be afraid of iron. This is another thing I want to point out. It's only if you're going to take excessive amounts of iron every day. And we're not doing that, and we're not recommending that. And supplements in Canada and the US do not have excessive amounts of iron. So we never have to worry about that, unless you have hemochromatosis, which is a genetic condition, a small amount of people. And I have the gene for hemochromatosis, which is high iron, but I have had low iron my entire life and have taken iron supplements since I was about 16, and I probably needed them from the time I was born. So when you get your iron checked, you want to have your hemoglobin and your ferritin checked, and you want your ferritin to be 100.
Yes.
I mean, finally in BC, they changed it. It used to be 15 to, I think, 230 or something like that.
Huge range.
Huge range. So if you were 16, your doctors say, oh, you're normal. Well, I can tell you, if you're below 100, your hair is falling out, you have no energy, you're depressed, you've got all of these symptoms, you've got hormone problems, you get heavy periods. When your iron is low, you get heavy periods. And guess what happens? 2 heavy periods in a row, and you're anemic.
Yep.
So then you have to take a bucket load of iron to fill up your iron levels, because every month you're losing so much iron. And, you know, a lot of the research that has been done on athletes, because we know athletes, so our kids at school are athletes who are playing hockey and playing soccer and basketball. And, you know, if your husband's a weekend warrior who's doing extreme sports, or you're working out in the gym 5 days a week,
Yep.
you're an athlete, and you become iron deficient quite quickly by sweating. And especially if you're not eating the right kind of foods, and you and I are going to talk about what are the right kinds of foods.
Yes.
They found that the research was done in predominantly men, not even in women who are menstruating. And so we know for a fact that if you're a marathon runner, or you're going to do the marathon running, or you're going to start a running program as soon as spring hits, you need iron. And I frankly think everybody needs iron.
That's a good topic. And, you know, when you said the research was done in men, well, we've also found out that seems to be the case with a lot of things in medicine. So that it's not targeted to women. We don't know as much as we should in those topics, which, you know, that needs to change. We need to make sure that we're doing it differently.
Think about the old people. So, you know, when my mom was living in a nursing home, your grandma, I remarked to the nurse that they should probably be testing all of the women in the facility, predominantly women, because all of them were losing their hair, were pale as ghosts,
Yep.
and had fingernails that looked terrible. And I said, does anybody even think to measure iron in women who've stopped menstruating? So menopausal women, it is rare your doctor will ever check your iron. And yet it's very, very common, especially if you, during the perimenopausal years, the 10 years before menopause, if you had heavy periods, which is really common, or flooding periods, even if you just have 1 day of flooding periods in your cycle, that's enough to create anemia. Then your periods stop. Everyone thinks, oh, well, she's not menstruating anymore, I don't need to check her iron. And frankly, they don't check very much when you're over 50 anyways. Most of the women are iron deficient. And so it's creating havoc with our moods as well. We're going to talk about kids.
Yeah. And I was going to say with the women, you know, you go through menopause, and then, you know, your hormonal changes and anxiety. Well, if you have low iron, it's just going to add to all those feelings. And then, of course, when you go to the doctor, if they're not testing the iron, they're definitely going to write you a prescription for something different.
Right. And one of the symptoms, you know, we should probably talk about the symptoms of iron. But when I was getting ready for this talk today, I was looking up, you know, these unusual cravings for non-nutritive substances. Things like dirt and ice.
Pica.
So, you know, if you've got a teenager chewing ice, can't wait to go and get a big container of ice, that's called pica. That's a symptom of iron deficiency. If you've got a toddler eating dirt, it's another one. But starch-based products, and I think about the number of women that are absolute bread addicts. And I wonder if they're craving starches, which are, you know, bread is a starch. And maybe that's the reason why they've got these horrific bread cravings, you know. But the symptoms are, we really should talk about them: cold hands and feet, you know, breathlessness upon exertion. And I'm not talking about running a marathon. I'm talking about walking up 5 stairs.
Yep.
You know, poor appetite is another one which we don't think about. Brittle nails, we talked about that. Inflammation, you know, extreme fatigue, chest pain, rapid heartbeat, so you feel your heart beating in your chest.
Yeah.
And these are just some of the symptoms. Hair loss is the one that gets women going and getting their iron checked. That's
because
for
they
sure.
can see it. They can
because
definitely
it's
see it. Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah, and it's horrible. Yes. Yeah. But like I noticed that when I had low iron years ago, that singing in the car, if I couldn't get through the whole song, you know there's something wrong. And so like people don't think about it. Oh, did I have to take an extra breath in that song while I'm sitting here? Like that should not exert your body at all.
No, it's true. You had terribly low iron from, you know, the challenging pregnancy that you had. And, you know, that's the reason why you developed this BioFe iron. And by the way, Caitlin was my, she managed the entire supply chain for my Lorna Vanderhaeghe Health Solutions company. So she knows a lot about choosing raw materials to make great products. And your iron is exceptional. I mean, I think it's the best one on the market. And BioFe comes in liquid, tiny little tablets. One of them is a plain, it just kind of has a little sweet edge to it. There's no sugar in anything. Then you have one that is delicious, a grape flavored one that's double the dose of the other one. And then infant or baby drops, which you can put into food, or you can just drop it into the mouth or on a spoon too, because it tastes great.
Yeah.
Like all of these irons taste absolutely delicious. People keep asking me what you've done to them to make them taste so good, but that's your secret.
It is. It's my secret sauce.
Yeah. But I mean, we wanted to talk about test scores
Yes.
in girls at school, because I think that the female athlete, so this is the one who's playing basketball and track and, you know, hockey and soccer and everything else, and who is not eating properly. Maybe we talk about that first, because every mother thinks their kid eats well.
Right. And the thing isn't they're not eating bad food. It's that they might not be eating the right foods for iron deficiency. And that's, I think, where parents like, well, no, I'm watching what they're eating. They're eating healthy foods. You know, they're not really eating a lot of this, this, and this. But then when you break those items down, are they iron-rich foods? Are they hindering absorption of iron of the other foods they're eating? And I think that's the part where we really need to make sure that parents know the difference. Yes, those are good foods, but they're not going to help your iron levels.
Right. Well, and little kids, I mean, I know for a fact that most little kids are not eating the egg yolk. They're not eating the meats that you're putting on the plate. They're a lot of picky eaters.
Yes.
Teenagers tend to go on these strange diets. And the reason why dairy products are so bad, that they inhibit the absorption of iron. Well, if you were taking an iron supplement, I think you'd be fine. But the problem is you're not eating any iron-rich foods. I mean, we're supposed to be getting 20 milligrams of iron every day from our diet. And the latest study showed we're getting 8. That's bad. Yep. And that's for people who are eating heme-based iron, so animal-based iron, such as, you know, lamb and chicken and beef and those types of things. And because we've now moved to a plant-based world, we're seeing even less iron being consumed. And then add it to the foods that cause hindrance of iron absorption, like dairy products. You know, combine those two things together. No wonder we have an iron deficiency problem. And, you know, the reason why they added iron to baby cereals is because infants are iron deficient. Yeah. And, you know, and the other thing is they tell people, well, if you're formula feeding, they have iron in them. But if you're breastfeeding, they say, oh, you're good for 6 months. It should say you're good for 6 months as long as your iron was awesome.
Yes.
When you had this baby, during pregnancy, and after when you're breastfeeding. If you didn't have awesome iron, or you had a big bleed at birth, or you're now not eating, you know, red meat and taking your prenatal supplement, which most people don't take because they're horrible. And your prenatal, of course, had the BioFe iron in it, so you didn't get constipated, which was so awesome. But yeah, these are things that are so important. So as a mom, I mean, I fed you guys, I was a nutritionist, so I mean, you ate protein and fats and mountains of vegetables until you didn't want to eat them, but I still knew you were not getting adequate nutrients. And so I used to hide mountains of nutrients in your shakes every morning and in the spaghetti sauce after it was cooked, because we're just not getting enough nutrients from our food. We aren't. That's the bottom line.
That's true. And, you know, a lot of us are just extremely busy with the activities. You know, like there's just sometimes not enough time in the day to do everything that needs to be done with your kids. And, you know, some days, you know, you're just trying to get by. And so, you know, you want to make sure they're fed. You want to make sure it's nutritious. And so that's kind of where supplements come in. We make sure that we can supplement the diet. We maintain our levels with supplements so that on those times where we're not going to eat properly, we know that we're getting what we need.
Well, it's called filling in the gaps. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think a lot of our health issues that we have as adults actually happen when we're kids.
Yes.
That we're not getting adequate nutrients when we're kids. And, you know, I mean, your sister was a, you know, ballet dancer who was ballet dancing 4 or 5 hours a day. Her coach did not realize that if you don't get adequate, excessive nutrients for someone mm-hmm. who's doing that level of activity, they get nutrient deficiencies. You know, even things like scoliosis, we know, yep. are caused by nutritional deficiencies. So we need to, as parents, ensure that our kids are getting nutrients. And every time I hear that a doctor says, oh, you can get all your nutrients from food, I'm like, have you ever tried to feed a kid 10 cups of vegetables a day? Because that's the minimum number of vegetables they need to eat in order to get adequate vitamins and minerals. I can tell you, you guys used to revolt when I was trying to feed you that many vegetables.
Perfect children. What are you talking about? We were perfect.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's just the amount of everything. Like, you know, we have kids that, like, I have one daughter who loves broccoli. She could sit there and eat an entire thing of broccoli. I have one that won't touch it. So, you know, it's also, do they like the sensory issues of eating it, the taste? You know, there's so many different things that go around with it. It takes 10 times to try a product or a food until, you know, your taste buds are like, okay, maybe I like this. So just to think about the amount of times you're introducing new foods, we're making sure that the kids are getting everything, we're expanding their palates. It takes time.
Yeah. And so, you know, we should talk about dosages because, you know, kids should be getting about 10 milligrams of iron from a supplement per day. You have a 5 milligram dose, so even half of that. This is elemental iron. So this is the actual iron you're getting, not how much powder is in the actual product. So a 5 milligrams is a tiny amount. 10 milligrams is adequate. If you're iron deficient or you're pregnant, then you probably want to go to 15 or 30 milligrams a day. You know, anything over 30 milligrams a day, I'd be talking to the doctor about it, making sure that you're getting tested. 40 milligrams a day is kind of the max that you would take without being monitored. So you do not have to worry when you take these low doses of iron. Make sure it says elemental on the bottle. If it doesn't say elemental on the bottle, don't buy it. And frankly, buy BioFe iron because the research is awesome.
Yes.
And you don't get constipation, stomach upset, graying teeth, and it will increase your iron and your ferritin and hemoglobin. Oh, and I forgot to say your hemoglobin should be around 140.
Right.
So 100 for your ferritin and 140 for your hemoglobin.
And then when you're at the doctor, since, you know, we don't always go and get our blood work done, what else can we get done at the same time so that we don't have to go back?
Yeah. So I would have a CRP test as well, because we know that inflammation is associated with iron deficiency also. And CRP, you know, it's a dirt cheap test that's covered by our medical system in Canada. And it can tell you a lot about inflammation going on in the body as well. I mean, if you've got a really messed up iron test, they'll probably do, you know, antibodies and other types of tests. They may even do a B12. And I think you had a question from somebody asking about cofactors, so things that increase iron absorption. And I know that in the BioFe liquid, you have B6 and B12.
Yes, we do.
And you know, those are important cofactors to increase iron absorption. And if you were taking the crummy forms of iron, then you definitely need to have B6 and B12. And with the BioFe iron, you're going to absorb that iron. You don't need cofactors. That little micro encapsulation around each micronized tiny amount of iron is going to go directly to your small intestine. It's the secret sauce in this iron. But you've added the B6 and the B12 because it's also going to increase
blood cells.
Yeah, it's going to make your red blood cells happy. So that's a good thing.
But so we have ferritin, hemoglobin, CRP, right?
Yeah.
And then with kids, we always test heavy metals at the same time because the heavy metals can start taking over when your low iron drops. And so high heavy metals in a child is very bad for them. And they also have other signs and symptoms with heavy metal toxicity. So for kids, we do heavy metals with the iron. But adults, what else would you test?
Well, in adults, I do the whole range. Thyroid. I think thyroid is so incredibly important because if you low thyroid and low iron also go hand in hand. And if you have low iron and low thyroid, you get heavy periods, and then you end up in this vicious cycle. But I wanted to mention something about the heavy metals before I forget. Iron kicks out heavy metals. So if your iron is at an adequate place, it kicks the heavy metals out of position. So they're lowered. And so it's very, very important that we keep our iron levels at that level, just simply to keep the heavy metals at bay. And remember, you know, heavy metals, we're getting them in our air and our soil and our water. Plants absorb heavy metals. So we're now, I think with these plant-based diets, we might just see a higher amount of heavy metals as well in people, especially if they're iron deficient.
Right.
So in adults who are going to get tested, you know, for menstruating women, I always recommend day 10 to 15 progesterone test as well, just to see where your hormones are at. But thyroid is key. You probably already also want to have a B12. And, you know, if you can get your doctor to do a vitamin D test, that's important. And vitamin D is very important as well.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's all the testing is extremely important, because then you get a baseline of where you're at, so that you know if your signs and symptoms are because of a nutrient deficiency. And if they're because of a nutrient deficiency, then you can solve that problem, and you don't have to go on having all these signs and symptoms and feeling horrible all the time. You can solve the problem.
Right. And, you know, let's talk about testing our kids. So if your child has the pale under eye, so they could have dark circles, that's one symptom. They could have tantrums, they could have sleep problems, they could have poor appetite, you know, not doing so well in school, behavior issues, those kind of things. But check their eyelid. And if it's not bright red on the inside edge, my mom used to always check our eyelids when we were kids. But it actually is a good way to do a simple little check on your kid. And it's super pale, and you put them on iron, and it doesn't go up in about 6 or 8 weeks if you don't see an improvement. You know, those kids need testing. And frankly, you've experienced having to have one of your children tested on a regular basis. Tell us about that.
Yeah, you know what? It's actually very simple. I think that we think too much about it. The actual process is very smooth. You know, you can either go to a children's hospital that has an outpatient, which is where we went. So you call ahead, you make your appointment. They know you're going to be there. There's no waiting around. You get in, you get out, seamless. Those nurses know exactly what they're doing. If you're not near a children's hospital, you can call your local Life Labs, or I guess it's Compass Care, depending where you are now. And you tell them what you're doing. I'm coming in with a 5-year-old. I'm coming in with a this. Who is the best person? If you don't have someone, don't go there. If they don't have a nurse that's able to work on children, I actually wouldn't go. I would find a different lab to go to. But calling ahead, making sure that they're set up for you so it's a seamless process. At certain hospitals, they have programs. So at Children's, it's called Child Life. You call ahead. So if you have a child that has sensory difficulties, or they have fear and anxiety, you can call ahead and book an appointment, and they'll meet you at the door. So from the very beginning, they'll make sure it's a nice, calm process. They have iPads and toys, and they make sure they help the parents out and the child. So that's the simple process of getting that blood work done, because it's worse if you don't do it. The side effects of low iron are significantly worse than doing an iron test.
Well, and for children especially, because remember, they are growing. They need more nutrients than you and I do. They are growing like weeds. The amount of growth that goes on between the ages of birth and 18 is huge. And you're developing. This is when all of your organs and tissues, your brain, your eyesight, all these things, your bones, your teeth, they're developing. And we forget that the nutritional needs of children is higher. And frankly, we spend more money on our daily latte than we do on our kids' nutritional supplements. And that, I think, is really a shame. So make sure your kids are getting nutrients. If you're thinking about having a baby, then you need to get on your iron supplement now, and don't take those horrible iron supplements found in the pharmacy, or that, you know, very, very ancient, most sold prenatal supplement. You want to get on BioFe iron right now. Make sure your iron is really good. It cuts down on infertility and also miscarriages and low birth weight babies. So we see that when you have adequate iron levels, you know, you have full-term babies more often, not as many miscarriages, fertility is better, and babies are healthier. And then, of course, breastfeeding or formula feeding, and then make sure you keep an eye on the iron levels in kids, especially if you have a picky eater. And anyone with a child that has sensory food issues, so they don't like the taste of something or the feel of it or the look of it, and have completely excluded these things from their diet, or a teenager who's just eating nothing but edamame beans because they're watching their weight, you know, or kids in sports who are consuming a lot of whey protein, which is on the dairy side. They need to ensure that they are getting adequate nutrients, and iron has got to be part of it. And you have a great kids chewable supplement as well.
Yes. And you're right. So it's great that you pointed out preconception, during pregnancy, those babies, we got to pay attention to our toddlers, our teenagers, and then of course, menstruating teens, women, fertility issues, pregnancy, seniors. Basically at every point of our life, we need to pay attention to our nutrient levels, because we need to make sure we solve them ahead of time. We don't want to end up being 35 and trying to get pregnant and realizing that all those problems we've had for the last 20 years are because of a nutrient deficiency. We want to solve them early so that, you know, we can grow nice and strong to our full potential without having a nutrient deficiency as our issues.
Well, and we should show people these tiny little iron tablets that you have, because they are super, super great. They're like so little, and every time someone tries them, and you know, you were on Dragon's Den in November, people should go watch it. Look at how teeny that is. It's tiny. And how many ingredients in that? I think there are only 3 or something.
Three ingredients.
Yeah, 3 ingredients. So super clean. So not like a gummy that's full of sugar and other things. You know, I had one friend who was popping gummies like crazy and couldn't lose weight, and I said, well, you're eating a sugar. It was actually coated in sugar. It was these pink ones for her skin and nails. And I'm like, you're consuming an awful amount of sugar, and those gummies stick in the kids' teeth. So that's not good. And, you know, your products don't do that. They have all kinds of benefits, even have a teeth benefiting ingredient in that chewable. So, you know, I really recommend people give them a try.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm very excited that this was our first Instagram Live on our BioFe Iron page, and there are definitely going to be more to come. So if anyone didn't hear the answers to any questions they may have had, do send us a direct message. We will add it to our next Instagram Live so that we can follow up on all those great questions and talk more about iron deficiency for all ages, and all the signs and symptoms. So we are here to talk about iron all the time.
And go to the BioFe Iron website. And if you've got kids, you also want to check out KidStar Nutrients, products for kids.
Yes. So thank you, everybody. And thank you so much, Lorna, for being part of our Instagram Live today. So until next time, have a great week.
Bye.